strategy or stretch is not Bitcoin. And I think this is very important for people to know. And also, it doesn't really matter what strategy is doing to Bitcoin. So the good news is you don't have to, and you don't have to care at all what Saylor is doing, what strategy is doing. Saylor is not an existential threat to Bitcoin, even if all of strategy goes bankrupt tomorrow.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Relai Bitcoin podcast today with Robin Seyr, who I've met at the Bitcoin Prague, BTC Prague, this huge event. It was already now a month ago that we met there, but you were on main stage as well, and you had many interviews there, and we caught up in the VIP session. So yeah, wanted to invite you to the podcast to talk about the latest things, and I would be particularly interested in your take on the hot topic right now, which of course is Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy selling Bitcoin. But first of all, maybe introduce yourself quickly for those who don't know you.
Thank you so much, Julian. Yeah, it's nice. I've known you for quite some time. I think like two and a half years, which in Bitcoin times is like 10. It's almost like two decades of knowing each other. It's a long time. I have a podcast. I think it's hopefully quite well known in the English speaking community. Just with my name, Robin Seyr. I've interviewed now a little bit over 600 different people with over 800 episodes. I'm coming to the 900 episodes mark now, which is crazy to think about that. Yeah. It still happens that sometimes I meet a guest in person and I have to think about like, did I actually had him on the podcast or not? Because it's just like such a huge amount of people, which is really cool because I've learned a lot along the way. So when I started my Bitcoin podcast, I had not even a clue what UTXO management was. I thought I know Bitcoin quite well, but interviewing so many experts, interviewing so many different people from, as you said, strategy, the treasury space, from self-custody, from the technical space, from all the different angles, even religion coming into Bitcoin, all the different angles that you have with Bitcoin, you get a really deep understanding. So 800 episodes, that's like 1,200 hours or something like that, with just like listening and talking about Bitcoin. You have a very deep understanding of what's actually going on. So yeah, that's me.
Totally. And I think you must be two things that I think make you special. One is, of course, the deep understanding that you have, because you're one of the most productive podcasters that I've known. For a very long time, you did one interview every day, right? For at least a year or two. And so, yeah, as you said, you're approaching, you will probably hit 1,000 this year still, right? 1,000 podcasts. It's fucking insane. And so that's why you have this very deep understanding, and you've talked to everyone that is kind of has something to say in the space. But the other thing that makes you special is you do English content while actually you're German speaking native, right? So maybe how did this? Well, so we're talking in English now, and it makes sense to do the podcast in English for now. Maybe we'll do a German episode later on, but we could also talk to each other in German. So maybe quickly talk about what's the rationale behind this. Why did you choose when you started? Because you were very conscious about, I want to be a podcaster, I want to build a career, and you've now built your business and your personal brand around this. So it must have been a very conscious decision. I'm going English and not German, right?
Yeah, I started my whole building in the Bitcoin space with Twitter actually, and not with podcasting. And so when I started Twitter, I made it in German, and I think I grown from 0 to, I don't know, like 2,000 followers in German. And then one day I asked myself, like, oh, there's so many English, like I see so many English tweets on my account. Why don't I also contribute something in English? And so I just like made the experiment 1 month, switching to English. And it was my biggest month ever. It was really interesting. I've grown like a lot more in that 1 month than like the 6 months before in just like that 1 month. Then I was like, oh, interesting, because you actually are more unique in the English-speaking community, because in English-speaking community, there are a lot of people that are from America or UK or Australia. there are not a lot of, I mean, there's in general not a lot of Europeans. And if it's a European, it's more a UK person or Australian, which is not European, of course. And so if you think about branding, you should collect as many unique selling points for yourself as possible. You should, like with Relai, the Swiss, self-custodial, and all on Bitcoin only. So like you collect things that is just for you, even if it's personal branding for a company or so on. And so if I thought about it, I'm more unique as an Austrian speaking English for American audience than I am as an Austrian speaking German for Austrians and Germans. And so I have not only the potential to reach about 10x the audience, so like the English speaking community is 10x bigger than the German speaking community, just from like a pure how many people understand English versus how many people understand German. But also from a branding perspective, I'm more unique in the English speaking community than I am in the German speaking community. There are some drawdowns. For example, the audience mismatches a little bit there. So for example, if you think about monetization, I'm in Austria. A lot of the apps, a lot of the companies and services that I would like to work with are not even available in Austria. Mm-hmm. But they are here in America, and this would fit nicely to the audience. So I think if you just go for pure monetization, it probably would make more sense to dominate a small niche market like the German-speaking community. But if you think about not monetization, but thinking about your personal brand and what is the biggest possible pool that you have a unique standing in, and that's what I thought about in the beginning. It's for me the English-speaking community being an Austrian. But there's another really interesting part of that whole journey, because I have an interview podcast. I don't do the podcast myself. If I just have solo episodes, it wouldn't matter that much. But because I have an English-speaking interview podcast, I live to a certain extent from my guests. And so having, I don't have numbers on that, but I would imagine the selection between German-speaking guests and English-speaking guests is about 10x or 20x the size. You have Jeff Booth, Michael Saylor, all of those great names that you can only capture in English. They will not talk German to you, because I don't think they can even talk German to you. And so you not only have the bigger names and the very well-known names to yourself, but also then you have a lot more variety in your content. If you think about, if you talk to all German-speaking people, you talk to Germans, you talk to Switzerland people, and you talk to Austrians. And so they all are doing, I don't want to say they're all the same, but they have a very similar living standard. They have a very similar lifestyle. They are in a very similar cultural background. Yes, there's differences between a Bavarian and an Austrian and someone that lives in Bern, but it's rather similar if you compare like an American to someone living in Nigeria to someone living like in Sydney, Australia. So it's like you get a way bigger variety of people actually. And so that it was one thing that I actually noticed along the way, that is actually the bigger advantage of starting my whole journey in English and not in German. I don't think I would be able to do a daily interview podcast in German, just because I would need to re-invite guests like 4 or 5 times a year, and it would kind of like feel maybe very different. Maybe it's possible, I don't know. Nobody is certainly doing it. But yeah, in English it's possible, because I not only have the German-speaking guests, which they are still available, because most of the good German-speaking guests are speaking also English. But you also have all the English-speaking guests, which includes a very big variety of people across the planet. So those are some of the reasons why I chose English. There was one small reason in the beginning, because in the beginning, yes, I tried to make it a business, but I was not sure if it actually works out. And so I was never really good in English, which I even got stuck in a class 1 year because I failed in the English class, which is in hindsight quite funny, because now I'm doing everything in English. And so when I started, I was like, I want to practice my English more. I had my English girlfriend at the time, now a wife, and I have now my English podcast. So I was like, it's just, if that whole thing doesn't work out, at least I had some English lessons along the way. That was one small actual point that I wrote down of like why I want to do it in English.
Absolutely. Wow. That's an amazing story. Yeah, it was similar to me when I failed one class in university, and that was tech. So I mean, I studied business, and there was this informatics class, business informatics. So the one thing that had anything to do with tech was what I failed, and I was also really bad in finance. And now I'm running a fintech. So sometimes you never know what life brings to you, and at the very least you learn new things, right? And very often your weaknesses can even become your strength, and you should not limit yourself by the weakness. You should have a vision and go for it. And if it requires to turn your weakness into a strength and to learn something that you wouldn't have believed you can actually learn, like English, like tech, like finance, etc. Well, if you just have a vision, you want to go for it. And for what's really inspiring in your story is that you started from scratch. You had a vision, you had a mission, you wanted to educate people around Bitcoin, and you wanted to learn more. So first, probably you wanted to learn more about Bitcoin, and then you wanted to educate people about Bitcoin. And on the way, actually, if you follow your passion, happens so that most of the time you can actually build a business around it. Right? It's very, very similar in the Relai story as well. We just wanted to bring Bitcoin in a very easy way to people, to newcomers who are not finance or tech nerds. And because we suffered from it, my friends and family suffered from it, so we wanted to solve this problem. And step by step now, all of a sudden, we have a business, we have a team and a business built around it. So sometimes really interesting, and in hindsight, very inspiring how things can go, right?
It's so fascinating because I don't know how much of an anticipation you already had when you started Relai, like the first time you sat down with, I think Adam it was, and like founded tried to code something and tried to get investors and stuff like that. But I didn't anticipate that to be like a huge thing. I was like, okay, I want to start. And then when I start something, I want to make it the right way. So I approach everything the way I really want to make it big. But I was like, oh, how likely is it that it's me that will succeed with that in a major way? But I was like, let's try it anyways. Let's see if it somehow happens. And I still consider myself on the beginning of my journey, like the last basically 2.5 years. I'm now completely on my own without a job. And before that, about a year and a half, I did it on the side next to a full-time job. So if you consider myself being on the entrepreneurial journey for about 2.5 years, that's I think January 2024 was the first check that I got from Twitter. I think it was like €300 for the monetization of my Twitter account, which actually, it's so funny because this was, I hustled before that one check for about 1.5 years without getting any money whatsoever, like nothing, no ad revenue, no sponsors, no affiliate links, like just nothing. I also did not have my own merch store or anything. And so I just hustled every day in the morning, 2-3 hours before the work and 2-3 hours after the work, and just made Twitter happen. I grew in 1.5 years from 0 to about 7,000-8,000 followers. And then at like 8,000 followers, they introduced the monetization. I needed about 1-2 months to to fill all the requirements for that. And then I got the first check, and it was like €300. And I was so blown away. Like this was like nothing compared to my normal salary, but it felt like my money. You know, for some reason, the salary I got from the company, yes, it was my money. It was like I got it because I worked there, but it felt different. It's like I provided value just from myself, and I got money from that, just without the middleman, without a boss, without a marketing team, without anything. That felt very different. So I hope every entrepreneur that ever went through that journey can relate to that. It's like the first kind of small thing that you get as a validation, as a signal after 1.5 years. That was huge for me. And actually, about 2 months later, I quit my job after that first check. So that was a huge signal for me. In hindsight, it was almost you can say brave, but I could also say stupid, a decision to quit my job so quick. It always made sense. Like I always had a positive cash flow, which still astonishes me. But in hindsight, I took the decision very fast once I got the first paycheck.
Yeah, yeah. But sometimes you just feel it, and you're at this tipping point where no one can see it yet, but you can feel it, that you're on the right track and you can make this happen. It was exactly the same. It's very interesting, the parallels between two entrepreneurs. You always have these same phases and milestones that you go through. For me, this was when Adam and I first started with like a 20K check, and that was it from two investors, and we just wanted to make this happen. We just wanted to get the app out there. And I remember my moment that when you checked your phone and you got $300 from Twitter, my moment was when I downloaded the app, the Relai app from the App Store, and I had it on my phone. I was like, what the fuck? We actually did it. We have a mobile app that works. You can buy Bitcoin with it. I bought $50 of Bitcoin. And this was something we did in the last 3 months with 20K check, and we worked like for a year on it before. But now I finally have this app, and it felt so special. And we only had like 50 or 100 users, so it's far away from even thinking about a business. But we had an app. It's on the phone. I see it. We created this. This was a magic moment that also led me to quit my job and convince Adam to go all in, and then for a few months we worked on it without any salary until we then managed to raise funds, build a business, and start paying salaries, and now we're a big team, and everything has turned out to be actually a business. But this is all step by step. It needs that tipping point where as an entrepreneur you believe, now I can and want to jump and go all in, but no one else sees it at this point.
Yeah, it's you build something on out of nothing and on nothing, just on a belief, and it's actually quite astonishing. I love those journeys, but really is a lot bigger deal, I think, than my podcast. To be fair,
it's different. And I talked to we were talking about Prague before, and Michael Saylor. I talked to Michael Saylor on the VIP. It's also released out there if you want to watch it. I thought it was a really interesting angle because I was able to talk to him not about necessarily only Bitcoin or only strategy or only stretch and everything he's doing, but really also his entrepreneurial journey. And it was really interesting and very there's a lot to learn, of course, from a guy that built a $1 billion company first and then $100 billion company, and he's teaching some stuff or giving some advice to a guy that just built a company that's a few million worth. But it doesn't really matter. I think we're talking entrepreneur to entrepreneur. The actual numbers doesn't matter. Of course, it's much more impressive, the guys that have achieved these huge numbers, because there are just less and less people that can do entrepreneurship at such a high level. But in the end, the number is just a number. It's really about the entrepreneurial spirit, which unites us, and which is really something to really respect on any side. But let's maybe move to Michael Saylor, because it is the big topic right now, and you are an observer, an analyst that is looking into the whole. Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy in particular, since they started to adopt the Bitcoin treasury framework or strategy, but also in more general, the whole Bitcoin treasury space, and how that went from a huge bubble, you can say in hindsight, or a huge hype, to now being kind of crashing here and there, a lot of cracks. Let's see if the fundamental model will work in the future, or if it's just a bump in the road. So overall, what are your thoughts right now around Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy, and with Stretch, the DPEG and everything that is happening? Because you talked to Michael Saylor also a few times over the years. You've interviewed him, you met him in person as well. So and I think you're very deep into that topic. I think you took a few weeks and months to really dig deep down. I think it's a real big question mark for many Bitcoiners, or also Bitcoin newcomers, on, well, is this a big risk, or what's going to happen in the future? Is this all collapsing now? So maybe wherever you want to start, just start sharing your thoughts.
I think that topic is huge, and I have to be careful not to speak 2 hours now, but it's I want to let's make it in 3 points. The first point for me is that strategy or stretch is not Bitcoin. And I think this is very important for people to know. And also, it doesn't really matter what strategy is doing to Bitcoin. So like 80+% of my net worth, and I state that publicly many times, is Bitcoin and self-custody. And I think that's the foundation of it. I do own, just as a disclaimer up front, some strategy stock. I do no longer own Stretch, even though I think it's still a great product. I think if you are a Bitcoin hardcore maximalist that doesn't like any financial engineering, that's very fine. That's actually very good. We didn't come into Bitcoin to learn about preferred stocks and to learn about all the financial instruments. And the good news is you don't have to, and you don't have to care at all what Saylor is doing, what strategy is doing. Saylor is not an existential threat to Bitcoin, even if all of strategy goes bankrupt tomorrow. It will probably hamper the Bitcoin price a lot. And so you as a Bitcoin hardcore self-custody maximalist, you get cheaper sats. Like I think that's an amazing outcome. If you're not leveraged, if you're not doing anything fancy, which I don't recommend at all. So you as a Bitcoiner that loves self-custody sats, you don't really have to care what Saylor is doing, because the worst possible outcome is that you get cheaper sats for a few months, maybe even a few years. Because if Saylor would be an existential threat to Bitcoin, Bitcoin would never be what it actually is. So what I mean by that is, if one guy can come into 2020, buy a bunch of Bitcoin, crash his own company to the ground, and then with that take Bitcoin down with him, Bitcoin was never sound money. Bitcoin was never the asset that we think it was. And so I think this is a very important point to come back on. For you as a Bitcoiner that holds Bitcoin in self-custody, you don't have to pay attention on the Monday mornings when Saylor announces if he bought Bitcoin, if he sold Bitcoin, if he got an ATM going for the common shares and got something new in the cash reserves. All of those things don't really matter to you. You just stack sats and just relax and chill, which is the amazing thing and the innovation behind Bitcoin, that there is no management team, there is no announcements, there are no earnings calls, there's no 10Qs, there's no 10Ks. I love that shit. I come from that before I came to Bitcoin, actually. I had even in 2020 a small a stock channel in German on YouTube back in the day. But you as a Bitcoiner, you don't have to care about it at all. So that's why I sometimes don't really understand the hate that he's getting. Because people are saying, oh, he's putting Bitcoin at risk, he's kind of hampering the price. Not really. Like, if he could really do that, Bitcoin is not what we think it is, anyways. And I don't think it is that way. Now, to the interesting question of do I like strategy? Do I like Stretch, what they're doing? I actually love it. I think strategy is doing an amazing job in building a bridge between the normal financial world and the Bitcoin world. And it's that black hole speculative attack that we've been waiting for since 10 years. We had early articles, forum posts since basically 2011 that someone will do that. If Bitcoin is successful, someone will do that. Now, it happens to be Michael Saylor, but if Michael Saylor didn't do that and he came to the conclusion in 2020 that he likes to put all his money in gold or the S&P 500 instead of Bitcoin, someone else would have done it. It was always part of the journey that strategy or someone in that position is putting exactly that speculative attack on there. And now we have many other companies that try the same already. We have Strive, amazing team there. Metaplanet, I think, is doing the same thing. We have in Europe players. So there's many different companies now that do the same, and I think we will have 10, 20, hundreds of other companies that will do a similar thing. I don't think so many of them will survive. I think it will be a winner takes most market. But yeah, that's still early. We still have to see, because I was generally impressed by the execution that Strive was doing with Saylor, especially daily dividend. I think actually Saylor was a little bit surprised by that, how quick they executed on that. I have no background information on that, but it's just like from a neutral observer, I felt like Saylor was very impressed by the execution of how fast Strive got that down. Now, to the whole controversy of they sold Bitcoin. Yes, Saylor is very famous for saying, never sell your Bitcoin. And he also said on record on presentations, I'm never going to sell my Bitcoin. The company's never going to sell your Bitcoin. But it's a meme. People have to, if you are a strategy shareholder and you thought they are never going to sell the Bitcoin, you've never read the 10Qs, the 10Ks, you never listened to the earnings calls, because it's very clear that they always made the point, they have the Bitcoin, they can use it. It would be a very stupid decisions of them to say, we have all those Bitcoins, but we're never going to use them. Like they are there. If the company goes bankrupt, we keep the Bitcoin. if the preferreds go bankrupt, we keep the Bitcoin. That would be a horrible statement to make. Then never sell your Bitcoin. It's a meme. Saylor understands how to be an actor in the market. He understands on a very high level what he needs to say in order to be in a news cycle, to be an interesting person. He understands that being an interesting person makes him more successful, makes the company more successful, and keeps people hooked. It's actually the reason why they also publish the Bitcoin sales and the Bitcoin buys every Monday. They don't need to do that. They need to do it once a quarter. And imagine they close down the Q2 and saying, yeah, we bought about 30,000 Bitcoin and we did all those trades. There was like 35,000 Bitcoin we bought, 5,000 we sold. Net, we accumulated 30,000 Bitcoin this quarter. Nobody would care. Nobody would have made any news about it. But because they decide to post it every single Monday with the 8K file, they create interest in the stock, because the haters come out and say, it's a bad stock, never sell your Bitcoin, he didn't deliver on the promise, this and that. And they go through all the filings, they go through all the things from Saylor, and they put his face every single day, 24/7 on the newsfeed of everyone. And then the lovers come out and say, the haters are stupid because of XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. So he creates this feedback loop that the whole market keeps on talking about Saylor, about strategy, about MSTR, about stretch. And that's the reason why it works so good with Bitcoin also. Like, people can listen to 24/7 to Bitcoin news. There's the Bitcoin falls on like Saturday afternoon when, I don't know, the Americans wake up, the Europeans sleep, but there's a news cycle, there's something happened, there's someone writing a headline, that's why Bitcoin goes down, that's why Bitcoin goes up. There are prediction markets based on Bitcoin 24/7 where you can bet in what hour, at what price will Bitcoin end up. It's crazy. That's called a lot of interest. That is good for an asset, that brings liquidity into the market, brings liquidity to Bitcoin, brings liquidity to strategy. So my overall point is that all that fuss about strategy is very good for strategy. It creates liquidity, short sellers, buyers, people that go 10x leverage long, people that go 10x leverage short, and all that is very good for strategy and for Saylor and for everyone that is holding strategy. Now, I found it very interesting how the market actually reacted. I said it when they sold the 32 Bitcoin, that they are testing the waters and they are educating the market. About, I think, half a year or 8 months ago, on the earnings call, maybe it was 6 months ago only, they said, I think for the first time ever, that they're going to use Bitcoin. They're going to sell Bitcoin if needed. And I think before that already, Fong Li, the current CEO of Strategy, mentioned that they are going to sell Bitcoin if needed. And so they have been very careful with planting the seed that they are going to sell Bitcoin. It was very clear to me even like March, April already, that they're gonna sell Bitcoin somewhere this year. It's just like they're training the market. They kind of like, how was the word that most people inoculated or something like that? They kind of like train the market to observe the news that they are selling Bitcoin.
And so it's a shock when they do it.
Exactly. And so that's why they only did 32 because they could have sold a lot more. They could have sold just one, but 32 was kind of like an interesting size. It's like it didn't really matter. They didn't need it also. Very smart. They also planned it in the same week. Common share ATM of MSTR of about, I think it was 100 million or 120 million or something like that. And they sold Bitcoin for 2.5 million. So they could have easily not sold Bitcoin and just like issued a few more strategy shares. That would have made no difference whatsoever. But they purposely did it to train the market. We have strategy. Yes, I'm famous Saylor said never sell your Bitcoin, but I did it anyways right now. So please remember that. And now he sold actually a lot more Bitcoin. I think the 3,000 something Bitcoin. Bitcoin went up after that. Strategy went up after that because the market already stomached the news. They already said like, oh yeah, like they're selling Bitcoin. It's no longer a news. It's no longer a headline because they did sell Bitcoin before. By the way, just to be fully transparent, they also sold Bitcoin in 2022. But they rebought it, I think, 2 days later, so nobody really noticed. So they sold like 700 Bitcoin and rebought like 900. Like 2 days later, it was like a tax harvest thing. And so now the big question is like, why did they sell? Why did they have to sell? Did they bought too much and now they have to cover dividends, or what's going on? That's kind of like, I hear that from a lot of people, like maybe they bought too many and now the bear market is coming. Now they have to kind of struggle and there's a death spiral going on. The reason they're selling, and I'm like fairly certain of that, is to prove to the S&P rating agencies and the credit rating agencies that they can use the Bitcoin. Because if you remember on our earnings calls, I think like 3 earnings calls back or something like that, they announced they got a really bad rating from S&P, and the really bad rating was because of the debt. They did not had US dollar cash reserve, and they marketed their Bitcoin to zero. So all the Bitcoin that they had, they basically said it's worth nothing. And so what did they do? They are retiring slowly the debt that they have. They are replenishing the US dollar reserves, cash reserves that they have, and they're using the Bitcoin to make the point that the Bitcoin is actually worth something. Because they said, if they're going to sell, the Bitcoin market will crash, the liquidity will go out, and they cannot use the Bitcoin. Now they're proving Bitcoin is a very liquid market. They can sell at any time, even 3,000 Bitcoin, and they can cover the dividends with the Bitcoin. Even strategy did not need to do that because they have a positive MNAV. If you go with CEB, the common exposure, common share, oh gosh, I forgot the word, but it's they have a positive MNAV, so they could just issue more shares. They don't need to sell the Bitcoin, but they did it anyways. And Saylor explicitly said, we sold Bitcoin to cover dividends. That's to please the fiat overlords of the rating agencies. So now I laid out a lot of things. Sorry for rambling on so much, but that's kind of my current thoughts on strategy and what they're doing.
So that really they know what they're doing, right? I think a lot of people are now feeling like, oh, now it's over. He went too far. Basically, he flew too close to the sun, and now he's burned, and now this is all gonna crash. But I also, and maybe it would be interesting to hear from you as well, but when I talked to him this time around, this year in Prague, compared to the year before and the year before, he was actually less nervous. It felt like he was more confident. He knew exactly what he is doing. He knew exactly what's coming. And it feels like he just has this playbook that he knows what he needs to do this year, next year, and he's just executing on this. He has no fear whatsoever. He Everything is fine, even though sometimes it looks really scary, especially when you see the stretch product on the cap
Debagging, yeah.
sorry, from like 100 to below 80, where it's supposed to always be around 100. This is kind of scary and looks like, oh, is he still under control? But it really feels he is. And I think now this is just short-term growing pain that every entrepreneur, every company has to go through. Yeah, he's just ticking these boxes of the credit agencies. He's doing everything he needs to, to go by the book. And in this year or next year, they will get a better credit rating, so they can access bigger capital pools with their product. And instead of a few billions, they can all of a sudden raise tens of billions or hundreds of billions. They will put it all into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin will go up and will recover anyway from this bear market. And then it's just going to be a firework. Especially for the common stock, and of course also the interest for the stretch product, because the better credit rating and everything is just really is all planned out. You just need to follow the plan, and that's the impression I got. So the question for you is, do you agree with that, and do you think he's in trouble, or do you think he's just following the plan?
If you do the math, and there's now I looked up what it actually is called. It's a common equity Bitcoin exposure. So it's a metrics to see how many Bitcoin exposure does the common shareholder actually have. And it's a very important metric, because you don't only just look at what is the market capitalization of strategy and what is the Bitcoin worth that they hold. That would be an incomplete look. You have to look at the US dollar cash reserve. You have to look at the preferred stocks outstanding. You have to look at the debt, and you kind of have to add that all together. And then you have what comes down as the common equity Bitcoin exposure. And if you follow the math with the common equity Bitcoin exposure in 2022, they had a negative Bitcoin exposure for the common shares, because the debt was actually higher than what they had in Bitcoin. Because, the Bitcoin price tanked a lot, and the debt was just there, and it was like really, really big. So in 2022, if you bought Bitcoin, bought strategy, you were really brave, or you did not understand what's going on, but you were really brave just from the numbers, because they were really looking like they had big problems. Now, right now, they still have positive common equity Bitcoin exposure. They even get a premium on top of their Bitcoin holdings if you actually do the math. And so the market, even though in this really massive bear market, gives them a premium over the Bitcoin that they hold, which kind of tells me that people are actually excited about holding the strategy stock itself. Now, am I worried about a strategy? Not at all. First of all, people confuse the preferred stocks with debt. They don't have to pay that back. It's a capital stock. They can just retire it. They can just let go of it. I don't think they will do it. I think they will keep paying the dividends. I think they will keep pushing that price back up to par. It will be very long-term, like a very stable instrument, but it's just in the first year, it needs some time. But they don't need to pay it back. So they will retire all their real debt, the convertible notes that they have. And if they are gone, if the convertible notes and the debt is gone, they're debt-free. And I think this will be a massive moment, because then they have the size. Bitcoin hopefully will go up, so they have profitable quarters. Then the S&P 500 inclusion looks really good, because they proved that the market is liquid. They can use the Bitcoin. The credit rating agencies will like the moves a lot. And I think he proved the point that he really is committed to stretch, and he really wants to make stretch possible and work. And he had some feedback. For example, he used the US dollar cash reserve to pay down the leverage and the debt. The market did not like that at all. I also thought it was a little bit of a bad move. And now he stated the US dollar cash reserve will only be used to pay the dividends, and no longer be used to do anything other than that. He stated that on Twitter. I'm not sure if he stated it also in some 8K files. He probably did. I don't know. But he learned from the feedback and he got it back up to, I don't know, like $90 or $80 or something like that. It's far away from the 75 it once was. So I'm not worried about it at all. If you look at the common equity Bitcoin exposure, which I highly recommend to everyone that is interested in looking at strategy, because there you can actually see what is the actual premium or discount that you're getting on the strategy stock. And if you look at that way, you actually still have a premium and you still have a positive company outlook. And one more thing that I want to mention, I don't know the exact number, I forgot it, but in 2022, they barely bought any Bitcoin. I think they bought like a few thousand Bitcoin, which is like almost nothing for them. This year, they bought 150,000 plus Bitcoin or 180,000 plus Bitcoin, and we are still also in a bear market. So their preferred stocks allows them to issue a lot more equity and allows them to buy a lot more Bitcoin. So if you think about the difference between buying a few 100,000 Bitcoin versus a few thousand Bitcoin they did in the last bear market, it's massive. So I'm actually quite bullish. I'm trying to not allocate too much money to strategy because I like the risk profile of Bitcoin a lot more. I like that it's just like it goes up over time, that there's almost no downside risk in my opinion, and you just keep it in self-custody. So I always like to keep 80% plus in Bitcoin in self-custody, and then with the remaining things, I can have some cash, I can have some strategy, I can try some things out. But the upside potential for strategy is just tremendous if you think about how well that machine is working right now in the bear market, and how great of an exposure and how many people they're also writing about strategy. Also, the media angle of it is massive. Nobody cared what strategy was doing in 2022. Now everyone cares about what strategy is doing. People literally wait and anticipate and predict on Sunday what Saylor will tweet on Monday morning. It's crazy. And so I'm quite hopeful. I'm quite bullish. But I also want to make that disclaimer: strategy is not Bitcoin. And I will make one more disclaimer: stretch is not cash. So if you really want to hold cash, hold it in a Swiss franc, in euros, in dollars, whatever your local fiat currency is. It's a lot more stable, and you don't have to worry about it if the price goes down, because we've seen stretch can be temporarily go down, and so you shouldn't keep it for the next month. Stretch is more product for like 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. I don't know if you know you move in like 1 year and you want to keep it somewhere, not in Bitcoin or strategy where it's like highly volatile. Maybe stretch is a good place, but yeah, it's like know what strategy is and know what Bitcoin is. They are 3 very different instruments, and you cannot compare them whatsoever. Like it's a very, very, very different world. Those 3 worlds.
And Michael Saylor says that himself as well. The risk profile for each is different, and the base of it is where we all agree, including Michael Saylor. The base of every portfolio should be Bitcoin in self-custody, because that's the best risk profile. It will just go up in price over the years. It's the best store of value, best way to keep your purchasing power. And keep it yourself without any counterparty risk, without any government that can or company that can issue more of it. No one can take it away from you. This is the best risk-adjusted thing you can hold, period. And then there are speculators that want to maybe get more faster, and that's the risk profile. Then if you want to, that's the reason why you would hold MicroStrategy. Then there's some people and institutions, they want income. That's why you would hold something like Stretch, etc. These are just, again, financial engineering. You can go there if you want, but you don't have to. Basically, what all comes down to is if you just sit on your self-custody Bitcoin, you'll be fine. You don't have to go into all of this. But it was super interesting to cover more of it with you. And I think, yeah, to end this, to wrap it up, really the scale, which you also alluded to at the end, the scale of MicroStrategy now in terms of how much Bitcoin they hold. They are the biggest Bitcoin holder at this point, except Satoshi Nakamoto, who very likely is no longer around. So effectively, actively the biggest holder, and also the biggest buyer. 4 years ago, as you said, they bought a few thousand. Now they bought a few 100,000 of Bitcoin. They might buy and hold more than 1 million Bitcoin soon. And so just the scale of it is absolutely massive. And I think it's well planned out, well executed, and it's definitely super interesting. In a bear market, things always look much worse. In a bull market, they look too good. I think the reality is probably somewhere in between. But hey, Robin, thank you so much for coming on. Any last words you want to share?
I just looked the stat up. They bought in 2022 2,000 Bitcoin, and they did so far, I think, 170,000 Bitcoin in 2006. I just wanted to look it up if I was not wrong. I absolutely enjoyed it, talking a little bit about strategy. It's an interesting story. But yeah, it's very important for people to understand. If you don't have Bitcoin in self-custody, if you don't understand Bitcoin, start with Bitcoin, because you cannot understand strategy until you understand Bitcoin 100%, and you go down the rabbit hole. You have it in self-custody. You did the work. This is the important part. Strategy is for people that are bored from Bitcoin already, because they've studied it there 2,000 hours already, and they're like, okay, I love Bitcoin, I have it in self-custody, but I've been in the Bitcoin market since like 5-6 years. The volatility no longer bothers me. I've done the ups and downs, and I know how to buy Bitcoin and all of those things. For those people, if you're in that situation, it's fair to look at strategy as if you have a really nice steak for lunch, maybe the steak is the Bitcoin. Like this should be the main thing, and then like you can add some spice, some green beans, some whatever you want to add to the steak, and that's kind of your strategy. But like the steak should be the main thing. For I don't know if that comparison makes any sense, but that's how I look at it.
I don't know if it makes sense, but definitely now I'm hungry. And the last stats I just looked up is just in terms of how big they are. 850,000, roughly 847,000 Bitcoin they hold on the balance sheet. It's massive compared to BlackRock. For example, the BlackRock ETF only quote unquote holds 750,000. So it's really huge, and yeah, super interesting. I agree. Bitcoin is the stake, though. Everything else is kind of the things that are accompanying it and lying next to it. Interesting to tip their toes into it, but I think for our audience mainly, who are kind of still newcomers or new in the Bitcoin space, learn about Bitcoin and Bitcoin itself, and get some Bitcoin as much as you think is right for your risk profile. Look at it as a long-term thing. When it goes up and down in short-term a little bit, just wait it out. Long-term, it usually really goes up, and accumulate more over time. Learn how to self-custody it. Make sure you have it safe so you don't lose it, and then you get more and more into it. And after a few years, maybe you learn more about these financial engineering and experiment with that as well. But with that, thank you, Robin, so much. This was a very helpful episode, and very interesting to me as well. I learned a lot of stuff, and see you very soon, and maybe let's do this in German as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julian.
All right, cheers, Robin. Have a good one.